Um, I'd just like to introduce to you Miss Arawana Hayashi. A very warm welcome, Aravana. And I'll just give a brief introduction before I hand over the session to you. Arawana Hayashi is the author of Social Presencing Theatre, the art of making a true move. Arawana is an acharya, a senior teacher in Shambhala, a global network of meditation centers dedicated to applying mindfulness to creating enlightened society. She teaches both meditation and art-based practices on bringing out the basic goodness of individuals, of relationships, and of society. She brings embodied presence practices and meditation into the leadership capacity building programs of the Presencing Institute. With colleagues, she has created the art-based social change method called the Social Presencing Theatre, which we will have a glimpse into today, that makes visible the underlying patterns in individuals, teams, and larger social systems, inviting co-creation of healthy, compassionate futures. So thank you very much for being here, Arawana. We are really looking forward to this session, and over to you. A small clarification, Arawana. We normally have the practice of opening the chats right at the end, but you had also mentioned that you would prefer that people ask their questions by speaking up. So would we still hold it like that, that if people have questions in the end, they speak up rather than putting it on chat?
Whatever works.
Or I can hold the, I think we need to.
It's very nice if people, we can hear people.
Can't hear you, Arawana. Can you unmute okay? For Mika?
I'm not muted.
We can hear her.
Okay, we have a slight technical glitch here, I think.
Can you hear me now? I'm not muted.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, great.
Okay.
It's very nice to be able to hear people's voices if you have things you would like to share or ask. But of course, we can also use the chat, and later on we'll perhaps put something there also, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you very much. All right, over to you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very pleased and honored to be part of the conference. And I also am thrilled to see my colleague Manish Srivastava here, because he is so much part of the co-creation of our work for the Presencing Institute and extending out from there. So the presencing work, this word presencing, excuse me, I think this is very much connected to your theme of the conference, the self as presence. That the word is a presencing, is a made up word in English, which is a combination of presence, being present, and also acknowledging that our being is very communicating, that our work at Presencing Institute is based on awareness. It's called awareness-based systems change. And when we use the word systems, we are talking about not only this body-mind system, but our family systems, our teams, our organizations, and our larger social systems. So this word presencing is both a sense of being present and experiencing our own presence and the presence of others, which is largely tied to awareness. And it is also tied to the maybe the confidence we have, let's say, in our sense perceptions. Sensing and presence go together in this word presencing. It's saying that what we see, what we hear, what we feel, this is very valid information and data. But we tend to filter everything that we see and hear and experience. We tend to filter it through a conceptual framework that's full of assumptions, opinions, learnings from the past, prejudices, just concepts and ideas, which we all have accumulated in our lives. So this is important to various accumulated knowledge and accumulated view of the world. But it's also very important to notice that that what we think is not the same as a direct experience. That these are two different things: experience and thoughts coming and going. Some of those thoughts are heavier, they have more emotion, and some of those thoughts are more light, or what are we having for lunch kind of thing. So mindfulness is one of those practices that helps us notice, this is my experience of just sitting here, and this is what I think about it. So this word presencing gives more privilege to the sense perception, sensing, as a gateway for being present. And this sense of presence is not only a mindfulness of our body, a mindfulness of how we show up in our various contexts, but it also includes a sense of open awareness. So mindfulness, as you know, is the mind's ability to rest somewhere. Here it is thinking about the past or the future, and it can rest somewhere. And then it jumps off and it thinks about this and that, and mindfulness practice says, oh, let's just rest. Let's let our mind just rest with our body, right? This is our body, this is our mind. Oh, and then it jumps off and it thinks about something else. It could just rest. So our work in social presencing theater is around this, let's say, practice and inquiry of him. And it also is that our presence is so important on the planet right now, with so much conflict and challenge in social, environmental, so many ways, that it's very important now that we are able to be grounded and present and not just pulled into this and that, because there's so many distractions everywhere right now. So even though our work is called social presencing, it means that we do it with other people primarily. There are some practices, it's a set of practices, which is also true for the Presencing Institute. There are practices. How do we become more present? How do we bring more wisdom into the world? And not just, yes, it's a good idea, but here are some concrete things that we can do in terms of how we listen and speak and frame our work. So the social part means that we're going to do things with each other, and we'll do a little practice today in a small breakout group. presencing, as I said, is this sensing and being present. But the word theater, which is what our work is called, social presencing theater. Theater is an interesting word because we usually think of the theater or acting, pretending. But in this case, we're working with the root of that word. Its actual word root means a place where something is visible. And throughout all cultures, particularly of course, India has something is in the theater is visible, and bodies are very visible. We see one another. We walk into a room, we see the person, we feel that person. So theater in our work is not about acting or having any particular kind of performance talent, but it's just about the fact that we can use our body as a source of knowing, as a source of wisdom. We have conceptual and intellectual intelligence. We have emotional intelligence, being able to empathize and feel compassion. I just listened to a talk that Otto Scharmer, who's our colleague and who's the sort of the principal founder of Presencing Institute. And I heard him give a talk just a few days ago in Australia, in which, or to a university in Australia, in which he described the word sensing as the capacity to feel other people's suffering, to be able to actually make decisions that are not just for our well-being, but for the well-being of everybody on the planet, all beings on the planet. And in order to do that, one has to have this feeling of sadness or feeling of care for all people. So I thought that was such a beautiful description of this word sensing, that we can sense into the fullness of our human condition, which includes so much suffering. So theater then is this visibility, and we'll work a little bit with this and why embodiment is so important, the sense of being, living in the body. So if we could start maybe with just something that we could do all together. Probably you're very familiar with a little mindfulness practice, but I'd like to include that here, but very specifically around mindfulness of body and this sense of being. So can I ask you just to sit in your chair with your feet on the floor? I'm sorry that many of you, I can't tell because you have your cameras off. I don't know whether you're in chairs or if you're in places where you can sit, but I'm hoping that you can. And you don't need to be looking at the screen, but if you could sit without leaning back on the chair, just to begin with, just so that you're using your core body. And you feel that your feet are firmly planted on the ground, very firmly on the floor. You can feel your seat where you're sitting. And your attention or mindfulness rests on this feeling of being planted and sitting on this good earth, on our good Mother Earth. That we feel connected to our earth, and we then feel that we have a spot, we have a place on the planet right now. That every one of us, no matter where we are, all beings have a place right now on the planet, their spot where they're standing or sitting or lying down. And this is our spot where we are sitting on the planet. And we have a feeling that we belong there, that we belong on this spot, that the good Mother Earth welcomes us in this spot. And we feel, of course, that she's holding on to us. Otherwise we would just float into the space. She's always holding us close. We feel our back, the strength of the back. Maybe we have a feeling of our ancestors and teachers and mentors always backing us up, or we feel the top of the head, which is always in some conversation with the sky, with openness, with vastness, a sense of possibility. Manish and I have a colleague in the US, Beth Mount, who talks about astonishing possibilities. Our body is always between the sky, sense of heaven, like the principle of openness, and earth. We feel our heart, both appreciation and gratefulness and joyfulness of our life, all the aspects of our life that bring well-being and happiness, as well as this sense of sorrow or softness or sadness, compassion. This sad joy of the heart. So we rest our attention now on this feeling of the body, the low body, the back, belly, the shoulders, the arms, the neck, the face. The sense of this good body just sitting on the earth. And it's sitting in this particular shape or posture. And in social presencing theater, we often call the shape or the still posture of the body a sculpture, like a living sculpture. So just take a moment and feel your breathing, living, embodied presence as a still shape or a sculpture. If your mind wanders off and you think about things, that's just fine. You just remember to bring it back. And let it rest on the feeling of the body. So this is mindfulness of body when the body's in a still shape. But in our work, we work with movement from one shape to the next shape. Much of the work of Presencing Institute is about shifts or change or transitions or transformations. And a tiny example of that is just how we move from a shape of stillness to a second shape of stillness. And in between is movement. So it's important in our work that there's a mindfulness of movement, the ordinary movements of walking and turning and sitting down and standing up. That we actually feel the body as it moves through the space, gesturing or traveling. So in this case, here we are with our sitting shape, a kind of wakeful shape. Can I ask you now, what does this shape want to do? Like if it were to engage in a little movement, what would that be? So we don't think about it so much, but we listen to the body. What would the shoulders like to do? What about that lower back? What would it like to do? And if you could just on your own, you don't need to be looking at the camera. If you could just make a little bit of movement, starting wherever you'd like, in your back or arms or whatever. You can do it with your eyes closed. That's fine. Nobody's watching. A little bit of movement. Okay. And then please stop in another shape. So that you have another sitting shape. And it can be leaning or bending or twisting or whatever you'd like. Now, once you get in that shape, that's again what we're going to call a little sculpture, body stillness. What does it feel like? You know, what does the neck feel like in this one? And what about the legs? What do they feel like? You're listening to the body. And the body's language is feeling. What does it feel like, the sensation? Okay, now this shape, what would it like to do? And it can stretch or jiggle or do whatever. It can be just a part of a body, your hands or arms. It could be whatever you'd like, but you're tuning into what would it like to do right now? And then stop in a shape so that you have another still shape. It can be anything. Okay. Now, once more, here's your still shape. What would it like to do? Begin the movement. Take a little bit of a risk if you want to make a bigger stretching movement if you can. And stop in your shape. So just do this on your own for another minute or two. Mindfulness of body practice, we're talking about an embodied presence, which means that we're aware of our body when it's resting in a shape and when it's moving. Just practice on your own, everybody together. Eyes can be closed. We're not looking at each other. We're just trying out what we can do. If you want to stand up to do it, that's fine. Or you can do it in your chair, whatever you'd like. But just on your own now for a minute or two. Embodied presence using mindfulness of body as your practice. Attending to stillness and movement. And both are very important in our work. Stillness and movement. Resting and doing. non-doing and doing are equally important in our work. Being able to do nothing and just rest in a shape. And then letting the body do what it wants. And oftentimes we don't even know. So it's just a listening practice, listening to the body. Begin to find an ending to your practice, and we end by just finding a still shape and resting there. Once you have a still body shape, make certain that you can feel the whole body, the back of the body, the sides, as well as the front. Good. All right. Please come back and join our screen life. I hope you were able to do that. Those of you that I can't see, I hope you were doing, practicing a little bit. So this is not just ideas, but that you're actually more embodied than you were when you started. So it just takes a little bit of, of time. And in this case, we're not doing a prescribed set of practice, which is very good. Also yoga and things like that, which have more of a prescribed shapes and movement. But we're working with this spontaneous arising. What does my body want to do right now? Because our work is largely about innovation. It's about creativity. It's about coming up with fresh ideas, fresh speech, fresh action, which our world needs so desperately right now. It's not just doing a better version of the old thing. Things are really falling apart on our planet, as we know, and we need innovation. And we need innovation from the heart, not just clever ideas, but innovation from this embodied care and knowing. So this sense of spending a little bit of time in this kind of freestyle movement is very important in terms of getting in touch with our own creativity and our own spontaneous expression. Does anybody have anything that they would like to share about that, to say about your experience or ask? If you want to raise well, we're small enough that you could just raise your real hand if you're there, if you're visible, or your digital hand, if that's easier. So something that arises, a question, or what did you notice is the question we often ask. Did anything surprise you? Or what did you notice about your own embodied presence? So,
Arawana, shall I read out from the chat?
yes, of course.
So Prem says there were parts that were okay and parts that were not okay.
Oh, goodness. Thank you. That's a very good comment. I really appreciate this because it reminds me that in our work, the value base is not necessarily, is this comfortable or not? So I'm not quite certain what you mean by okay. But in our work, whatever we experience, we welcome that. We just say, it's this experience. Oh, it's that experience. And so this tendency that we all have to say, this is okay, this is not okay, based again upon some kind of value, or it could be just on comfort level. that the body is uncomfortable in, and those of us that are aging, or we have some kind of physical challenge, they are always comfortable and not comfortable. I'm not sure that's what you mean by okay, but in this kind of work, whatever we experience, we try to keep this sense of loving attention, the sense of welcoming, sense of being curious. Oh, what is that? What is that? What does that want to do? What movement would that feeling like to make? So thank you very much for bringing that again. Yes, painful somewhere in the left.
Sorry, that was just somebody's mic on, but it's all right now.
Great, thank you. Anything else? Yes, please.
Yeah. Right now, I feel a very deep intimacy with my body. And there's a certain sense of steadiness as well as a deep softness. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. So no matter what your experience, when we talk about self as presence, it starts with this. It starts with getting out of the mind and getting into the body. And sometimes we had a colleague that used the expression of little restorative justice project, that usually the mind is saying, do this, do that, we have to do this, we do this. And it doesn't pay much attention to the body unless the body gets sick or injured, right? And then the body speaks up and then you have to pay attention. But usually the mind is always going ahead and, making all the decisions and hoping that the body, complaining about the body or hoping that the body will behave. But in this kind of practice, we're asking the mind to be quiet and step back. We're letting go of thoughts, right? This is how mindfulness practice works, right? You attend to something, you let go of thoughts, and you let the body's voice become loud, right? You say, mind, please step back. And body, what would you like to do? Let's step forward with that body. What does the body want to do? How does the body feel today? So this balances out the relationship between the body and the mind, which is called synchronizing body and mind. And the fruition of synchronizing body and mind is a sense of being and the basis of well-being. And the reason that's important is now we'll get to the next part of our thinking here, which is the sense of awareness. Mindfulness is being present, right? Mindfulness is resting. When there's a sense of being, a sense of presence or well-being, there's less tendency to be self-absorbed. What about me? How is it going for me? What's happening to me? How do they think about me? There's more sense of being able to relax and open so that there's more open awareness. And that open awareness is a main ingredient in social field cultivation. So we are all here in our screen, a social body. So we talk about the Earth's body, our body, and the social body. And we are together on the screen, the social body right now. But you have many social bodies. Your family is a social body, your team at work, your organization, your community. These are all what we call social bodies. And awareness of the social body is very important, that we are not just having thoughts about things, but that we actually see and feel our social bodies. And the social bodies, they have their own mind, they have their own qualities. And that is what in presencing we call the social field, the quality of relationships. Are they warm? Are they brittle? Do they have depth? So all of our practices of listening have to do with this cultivation of healthy social fields, whether that's a family or team or organization or community. So you need this sense of embodied presence and being in order to feel that there's enough confidence to kind of let go of one's own self a little bit, to be able to be inclusive of others, to be aware, first of all, of others, and to cultivate this care that we have that's right here embedded in our social fields. It's right there. Everybody you can see one another. Well, those of us that can see each other, it's not so easy to work with the ones we can't see, but we can just imagine that they're there. But the ones we can see, like if you're looking at one another right now, we have a feeling for one another. It's not like you think that you're looking at a stick or something, right? We're looking at each other, and we can't see our bellies and we can't see our feet, but we can see enough of each other to have a feel for one another. Is that true? Even in this peculiar Zoom world that we live in now. And I don't know any of you except for Manish and just have met Harni and just now, but most of you I don't know, right? I've never seen you before, and yet I have a feel. I have a little feeling for you. Even though you haven't spoken a word, I have a sense of your presence. And I have a sense of our presence together. And that is a social field, a feeling quality. And that can be cultivated so that there's more insight, more wisdom, more compassion. And that's really our work on the planet right now, right? All of us who engage in change work as facilitators or teachers or therapists or consultants or whatever we are doing, parents. Our job is to cultivate healthy social fields. Because, like a farmer, then you plant seeds in the fields, and those, if the field is healthy, then you have healthy plants. But if the field is all dry and conflict and rocky and brittle, it's very difficult to get seeds to grow there, right? So social fields is what we're cultivating when we mean social presencing theater. So our practice now is going to be one that we call our stuck practice. Now, we love this, and it was Manish who came up with the philosophy of stuck, and then that we've kind of stayed with that. Their views about stuck. And one of them is, it's kind of like we said about okay and not okay. Stuck is not a problem, to be stuck somewhere. Stuck is a part of any innovation process. Any creative process has obstacles. If it's worth doing, it has obstacles. And we, in this case, we're saying, oh, this is terrific. We have a stuck place, something that is not moving forward. So I need for each of you to come up with some place in your work life that you feel is not moving forward. It could be a relationship, it could be a project. The obstacle could be like not enough funding or not the right people on the team, or it could be more of an internal stuck, like I don't have confidence or don't know, not enough direction or something like that. It doesn't make any difference, and you won't need to share that with anybody. So it's just something that you're working with in the practice, but you don't need to tell other people what it is. But you do need to have one, otherwise we won't be able to practice together. Does everybody have something that they could work with? Yeah, so yeah, you can write it down if you want, some place in your work that isn't moving forward. Just think about it for a minute and then I'll. Okay, now I have to demonstrate this for you because there are a couple things about stuck. It is not sustainable. Stuck is not a sustainable position. There's nothing in nature that's stuck. It's always changing. That's a definition of life. It changes, right? It's continually changing and transforming. You know, we're getting older minute by minute. It just changed. No one's ever staying the same. Everything is moving and changing. So being stuck is not sustainable. It is also that you're not stuck by yourself, that everyone is within systems, that in systems thinking, which presencing work is embedded in systems thinking, there are many causes and conditions that hold us stuck, right? And those are small things close to us and intimate, personal, let's say, and they are also global, systemic. We are held in the economic system, global economic system. We are held in oppressive systems of inequality and racism. We're held within larger systems, right? As well as the systems within our organizations and our own orientation, personal orientation. Okay, so the system, when we start to think like that, then we can start to build a little picture of our stuck that's a little more accurate and a little more, there's a little more potential for insight. So I'm going to ask you to stand, and Manisha and I will demonstrate. You can look at either one of us, really, because both of us will know. So if you can get a little bit away from your desk or your computer, that would be great. But you don't need much space, but a little bit of space would help. Oh, this is perfect. Thank you. Okay, now I'm just thinking about my stuck. I don't know what Manish is working with. One of my stucks looks like this. Kind of like this. So stuck can be, maybe you feel like you're being pressed down, like somebody is like, or something is pressing on your shoulders, weighting your shoulders, or it's on your back somehow, and you feel pressed down by your stuck. It's not about acting or like psychodrama or something like that. I'm sure that's a good method. I don't know anything about that though. So it's not you're not acting out an emotion, but you're feeling, where's the pressure in my life? Do I feel like I'm weighted down, or do I feel the opposite, like I'm stretched into way too many directions, right? Oh, I'm being pulled here and pulled there, and I everything is stretching me too far. Maybe it's just stretching like conflicting loyalties. Oh, I could go here, but maybe here, maybe here, maybe here. Like, maybe it's a family work conflict, or it could be like, I have a vision about what I want to do, but something is holding me back. It's almost like something is pulling on my shirt and I can't move forward. I just can't get going. I don't know why, but I can't get one foot in front of the other. So something like that. It's, it's a feeling quality if you're stuck. So take a moment and try to find yours. And I'll just take a moment. Again, you don't need to be looking at the screen. You don't need your eyes open particularly. Just try to find something that you can embody that is that is an expression of what you're experiencing now as you're stuck, if you think about it. Okay, now, once you get yours, so you can let a word or a short phrase come forth. It's not what you think about this stuck. If this stuck were a sculpture in a museum and it had a little title, you know, what does the stuck want to say? Then what would that be? Just your word or your phrase? My word happens today to be forgetting. Don't know why that comes up, but that's the word that came out from when I stay and hold my shape, that's the word that comes out. Yeah. Okay, now, has everybody got that? You did that's called sculpture 1, and you said your word. Now, in your breakout group, I would like you, you'll be in a group of 3. I'd like you to show your stuck, right? And say your word. Manish, what's your stuck? There's Manish is stuck. What's your word?
Scared.
Okay, good. And my word is forgetting. Okay, now what you're going to do, this is your sculpture 1, you're going to do exactly like the little practice we did earlier. What does the body want to do? What does it want to do? So you're not thinking, oh, what I would like to do, but what does the body want to do? Okay, here I am in 1, and Manish 2. You can watch both of us if you want. Okay, now I'm going to stay with my body. What does the shoulder want to do? I'm not thinking about it. I'm letting go of any thoughts and following what my body wants to do. Once we get into our sculpture 2, this is the second shape. Again, I'm going to rest there, and Manish also, and then I'm going to say whatever word comes up to me. Warming by the fire. Manish, what are your words?
Finding my spine back.
Perfect. Okay, so that's the example of what the person, so in your group of 3, the first person is going to get up, show their sculpture 1, say their word, move without thinking to sculpture 2, say their word or phrase. Okay, there are 2 people who are holding the space for that person. They're showing their loving attention toward that person, open mind, open heart. And they're going to reflect back, but in a very specific way. You can only talk about yourself as a witness. You cannot say anything about that person, because if you project or interpret what another person is doing, this creates a very unsafe space. And we need safety with this kind of work, right? Because it's new and it's unusual and people can feel a little self-conscious. So the person makes their sculpture 1, says their word, goes to sculpture 2, says their word. Then the other 2 can say either I saw or I felt, right? You could say, I saw moving from hands closed to hands open. I saw looking out to looking in. I saw twisted to straight, something like that. You just say something that you saw. It could be more poetic or an image. I saw a bird flying away, or I saw, you can say something like that as well, but it's something that you saw, or you can share, I feel, I felt, and you're talking about yourself. I felt my shoulders go up. I felt a little sad. I felt you move from cool to warm, something like that. Do you understand? So you only speak about what you experienced. You're not really talking about what they did, because you don't quite know what they meant by theirs. You're not interpreting at all. You're just saying that this is how it landed with me. This is what resonated in my body. Is that clear? Okay, so
Arawana, there's a question
of course.
About the seeing, whether it's factual. That's what it's on the chat. Do we just I saw? Do we just say the factual things, as in what? I think that's what it means.
You could also say it as an image. If, for instance, you saw,
Maybe Arawana, when I looked at your sculpture, the factual is looking away to holding together, and the metaphorical for me is returning to the bud.
yes, beautiful. That's a perfect example. So one is more descriptive and one is more like metaphorical, and either one is fine. As long as you're talking about yourself, like Manish is talking about his experience, not what he thinks my experience was, because he doesn't know what my experience was. Yeah.
And if I may ask, the reflection is at the end, right? Once the person finishes both the postures. Yeah,
That's right. That first person does their posture, one says their word, goes to two, says their word, the other two reflect back, I saw or I felt. Then there's a little pause, and then the second person, they offer theirs, and the other two reflect back. And then the third person. And it takes about 4 minutes. That's how much usually it takes to do each person. And so the breakout is about 15 minutes, so that you have a little bit of time at the end to talk about what you noticed. Okay? All right, everybody who's with us still. I see. Hopefully the two of you that are not visible can just be visible for this part. Great. So you have somebody to work with. It's not possible to do it if we can't see you. Okay, this is perfect. So we can go into our breakouts now. And Manish, you and I can go into groups, okay? Is that all right? Just so that we have enough people. Perfect. Can you arrange us properly?
Yes, just creating the rooms.
It's always a little awkward, but we've done this with thousands and thousands of people, and people really benefit from it if you're just a little brave.
Arawana and Manish wanted to move into groups, so should they have?
So yes, they have moved into groups right now,
But
and
they won't be
probably
able to.
they'll come back and then they'll
And
go.
then we'll. Ojashri, did you get a room invite?
I'm just trying to check where she is assigned to room 2.
I think she may not be around.
Yeah.
Okay.
This one room has 4 people. Can I move one person? No.
Sorry, one room has?
4 people. And one room has 2 people because Ojashri is not joined. So shall I move one of them?
Yeah.
Can I?
Yeah. I think you moved Arawana.
No, no,
No,
I
no,
moved
no.
Lata ma'am.
Okay.
But again, the same thing.
This is, we can,
So we have a little time for conversation. Anything that you noticed about the process, about your own, and not only your own kind of engagement with your own little gestures of tiny little transformations or shifts, but also how you were able to look and listen to the others. So we're listening both to ourselves in terms of this kind of self as presence to ourselves, but also self as presence to others. So anything that you would like to share about what you noticed, what surprised you, what touched you, please feel free. We have this rest of the time here for a little bit of sharing from you. That one of the things, I don't know whether I didn't mention, it was my oversight, I didn't mention that you could write these down. But if anybody did write them down and wants to put their 3 things, their 3 lines in the chat, you're welcome to do that. Sometimes we write, you could write what you said in sculpture 1 and sculpture 2. And then you write what the next person said, and then the third person, and it makes a little bit of a poem. And this time of working with Manish these years, I have so much more confidence that we can write these little poems about our experience. So you're welcome to do that in the chat, or if your journey from sculpture 1 to sculpture 2 had any message for you, you're welcome to write that down or also share that. You're welcome to share that by just speaking up and unmuting. That's great too.
yeah. Arawana, may I just read what is on chat?
Of course.
So Anjali is sharing that it was a fascinating experience when what the others observed resonated. It was very satisfying. And Prem is sharing that there was a felt sense of being seen by the others.
Well, so Deepak, were you first? I didn't notice the order. Please speak.
Either way is okay. So I think what hit me was the fact that how others see it, and it sort of helps you articulate better what you are going through, and therefore in turn sort of be able to deal with it, for the lack of a better word.
Right.
And that also comes as a very pleasant surprise that, oh yeah, so what you show others without talking, without saying anything about it, and how others perceive it. So there's a sense of resonance plus being understood and connect.
Yeah.
So that was good, actually. We had a good laugh, all 3 of us at the end of it. But
Beautiful. Good.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I often feel that other people say something that I know, but I can't access. It's under the surface or something. But then when they say it, then I think, oh, I knew that. I hear what they're saying, even though I couldn't access. Yeah, beautiful. Oh, please go ahead, Yapash.
Yes. I just wanted to share two things. First was how it felt to see uh, the other person when they were in their stuck and then they moved where they wanted to be. I felt that a part of me connected to their movement in a very separate way from what they were feeling. My feeling about their stuck was very different from what they explained, just looking at the action and the movement. So I was very alive to that. This was one thing that I observed through the exercise. Second thing, which was something very personally I deeply felt, was while I was demonstrating my stuff in the way I performed and did it, I also felt on a very macro level connected to many people in the community or the city or the town, or on a social level, who almost felt like I was part in that position, felt like a part of like a grid or a hive, sort of like, which created a pattern that felt like community is feeling, or like like, the country is feeling, or the world is feeling. So that was something that was really alive to me, that I didn't feel alone, that I was the only one who's in that position, or I am the only one who is wants to move to where I want to move. These were the two things I felt very strongly.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much. Both of these are familiar also for me, that this both the sense that what I see is not what they're saying. It's another aspect or something like that, that there's so much complexity in a certain way of our experience, that there are many facets of just this a tiny thing. You're just moving from one shape to another. It's not very much material. And yet there's so much depth and different facets to that can be revealed. And also this sense that we're never alone. And that's such a beautiful reminder. I really appreciate you saying that every being has felt this like I'm feeling now, and it's very profound, I think. Thank you very much for bringing that. Yeah. Please go ahead. Yeah. Without my glasses, I can't see people's names. I'm sorry.
Gitanjali, you want to go?
Yeah. Please.
So, as you asked that, what surprised you? So, I have been telling myself from many months now that I'm enjoying every day and I'm super happy. And I have that feeling also internally. I could feel that I'm like in a joyous state. But today, when you asked us to make that posture of where you feel stuck, I didn't realize that how stuck I'm feeling internally. And I was just surprised to know that I've been trying to work on self so much, and still, uh, I'm feeling so stuck internally, with maybe not. I mean, I've been talking to so many people, I've been working a lot, and still that feeling of stuck is there. So just surprised that uh, when and how, uh, or will it ever go?
Yeah. Very much appreciate that sharing that. that maybe it's this, that stuck and freedom are, we think of them as opposite, and yet, awareness is big enough that it can hold both. It can hold all of the, stuck is not just personal, right? There's systemic trauma, right, for all of us. There's family trauma. There's karma. Basically, we're all born into karma, and karma is, it's never ending, right? It's until one's enlightened, right? So there's always a restriction, right? There's always habits. There's always emotional fixation and conceptual fixation for all of us, right? And yet at any one moment, there's an experience of openness and freedom and vastness in which our own wisdom is co-emergent with our craziness and our limitations, right? And in this particular work, we are not denying that there's enormous stuckness and suffering for all of us, each of us. We're not denying that. That's sometimes called spiritual bypassing, where you sort of have a kind of spiritual bent that says everything's fine. It is a view, right? It's a view that there's perfection. And it's a view that many of us at Presencing Institute hold very dearly, that every single person is basically good, basically strong, basically kind, basically wise, and that systems hold that. Otherwise, Presencing Institute talks about an emerging future, leading from an emerging future. If you thought the emerging future was going to be worse than what we've got, you wouldn't be interested in an emerging future. But we have a feeling that if we could access this basic goodness in all of us and in our systems, that systems, school systems, healthcare systems, they're not fundamentally toxic. They have fundamental good people who want to be of benefit. And that we just need to get underneath this kind of fear and aggression and confusion in order to let that wisdom come out. So this sense of, of course, there's always a longing for freedom, for liberation and for not being stuck on a very practical, small level, and in our whole kind of life vision, epistemological sense. Everyone wants freedom, right? Everyone wants happiness. Nobody wants to suffer and be stuck. And yet we make choices individually and collectively, continuously, that keep us in producing outcomes that none of us want. So I love our colleague Peter Senge, who often says, what is personal is systemic, and what is systemic is deeply personal. So this sense of trying to uncover in this tiny way with our social presencing theater practices. This is just a tiny touch, and anyone who's more interested can really work with Manish in the future on this. But it's just touching into this sense of appreciation for all of our life experience. And to not just say, this is the bad one, and we have to get rid of that, we have to outsource that to somebody. And this is what we're going to hold on to. This is the good one. But saying that a full life includes all of this. And in fact, the places that are the most stuck have the most potential for learning. Learning is a great value in this work. Creativity is a great value in this work. Being kind of awkward and not knowing is a big value in this work. It's just being curious and open-hearted and open-minded. Having a beginner's mind is of great value. Being right and wrong is not such a great value here. because we're not talking in that realm. We're talking about what is it that this body feels like doing? What is it that is actually resonant, to use this word, resonant about what I experience? What is really true about our connection as human beings? So that's the area that we're in cultivating these kinds of qualities, rather than is it right or wrong or good or bad. This obviously ethics is very important, but it has to be an ethics that is based upon our care for the world and our love for one another, and not an ethics that's based upon judgment of what's right or wrong. So this is a very, I think, very profound, again, an interesting thing about this longing for non-stuck, and also the respect we have for stuck and for just karmic patterns, and how the gracefulness, or we call our work the art of making a true move. And there is artfulness in just a gesture that can emerge out of an open space. And so we're trying to shift our attention to, so let's say this is awareness, and this is the ups and downs of life. All of us have good qualities and confusing and difficult qualities, and that's true for everybody. So awareness notices this, right? Notices, oh, this is this, and this is that, and this is a good one, and this is a bad one. This is wanted, this is not wanted, this is okay, this is not okay. Awareness notices that. But our work has a lot to do with identifying with awareness, so that our sculptures can go from 1 to 2, from stuck to moving, from systems that are, hidden and have lots of blind spots, to things that are more revealed. But the key to it is this open awareness, which sometimes Otto calls loving attention, that we don't, we don't reject our experience, but we just feel that it's all part of the richness of being a human being. And it allows us, as Kalpesh says, it allows us to identify with others easily, to be able to extend ourselves so that we don't feel separate, like this is my stuff, this is my burden, but that we actually feel that collectively we can soften to one another, and collectively we can bring our own wisdom and courage to our work and to our families and to the world. So it's very, very helpful to have your reflections, because I feel like that has really deepened certainly my understanding of the work, and probably for all of us. Anything else? We have just a couple of minutes, and
there are a couple of reflections that could be read out. I'll just go through them.
thank you.
Yeah, Rika says that I think she's describing the shifts that may have come through. There was a sense of being tied up to undoing it, covering up, to moving towards pushing away in order to be free, and from shackled to freedom.
Beautiful. Yeah. Sometimes I have to just say to close that if you're using this with clients, for instance, it's very important that sculpture, you call sculpture 2 just sculpture 2, right? Stuck to sculpture 2. You don't say it's to unstuck. That we never sell this as a problem solution method. In any of our social presencing theory work, we never say to the client, this is a problem solution method, because it is not. And sometimes you go from sculpture 1 to something that is way more stuck, that you actually realize that the layers of stuck are much deeper than you thought. And that's a good outcome for us, because it's true. And we're more interested in the truth of it than we are in, getting a sellable solution. So whatever your sculpture 2 is, that's just an opportunity to reflect to journal a little, and to just really appreciate. So I know we're out of time and you have a busy conference here. So I really want to say how much I appreciate being with you and meeting you, and really appreciate the invitation from Harini and the support of Mega, and certainly so happy to see my colleague Manish with us today. And I wish you the very best on the conference, and that it's enlightening for all of you and strengthening as we work further. And certainly any more that you would like to know about social presencing theater, please be in touch with Manish, who's certainly a better teacher of this than I am. So I really.
No way, Arawana. No. Yeah. But we have shared the links. I think Megha has shared the links for you to find more. And on Sunday around same time, I would be offering a practice around what Arawana has shared to deepen the practice a little bit more. So please feel free to join that. Thank you, Arawana. Such a joy to be in this in space with you always.
Thank you, Manish. Also, can you put the link for the book in there?
Yes. We have already done that. Megha has done that. Yeah.
We are just doing that. I'll just announce it because people might not know. So sorry, but Arawana, were you saying something?
No, not at all. But just if people wanted to know more or to support a little bit of support around the work, there is a book and it's available. It's difficult through Presencing Institute because of the mailing, but I think there are local sources in India maybe for getting it. Thank you so much. I really
thank you so much, Arawana, and thank you, Manish, also for being here. And I just am left with this felt sense of such a rich experience, and thank you so much for really bringing us this felt sense of presence, like this deep tuning in within and with the other, and just knowing how much that can be a container for things to emerge and move in their own time, and just making it possible to see how much of this doing that we keep doing for getting things right can actually be just dropped off. So, and I think what is really beautiful, even though I didn't get to go to the groups, I think I just have this felt sense of how it can be a very simple experience to just sense in and sense the other. So very, very grateful to you, both of you. And Manish, we do hope to have more of this in your session. So thank you for being here today. And hopefully some of us will be able to stay connected with what you just brought to us. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.